morning, bookish people. Welcome back to the channel. What are we doing today? If you watched my July TBR video, then you know I did not only just pull It Ends With Us out of the TBR jar, but I also pulled It Starts With Us out of the TBR jar. It's like the TBR jar gods were telling me, Megan, it is finally your time to read Colleen Hoover, and not just any Colleen Hoover book, but start with her most popular book. How could I be part of the bookish community if I have not read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover? I mean, even Kendall Jenner has read this book, and I haven't read this book. So we are going to be reading It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us all in one day. I set aside this whole day just to binge these. This one I hear is super emotional, sad, and depressing, and this one I hear is like an extended epilogue, and it is happy. So you know what? We're going to start in a low and end on a high, emotionally speaking. I'm not going to go into this book and act surprised when Ryle turns abusive. I've been a part of the bookish community for a while, consuming lots of bookish content. I pretty much know the plot to this book by now. I don't know specifics. You're following this girl Lily. She gets in a relationship with a man named Ryle, and he's love bombing her, so you fall in love with Ryle at the beginning as a reader, and then he slowly turns abusive, and then she reconnects with her high school sweetheart Atlas, and I think they're the ultimate end game of this book, and it really just shows an abusive relationship and this girl going through it and getting out of it. That is what I know this book to be about. So like, I'm not going to be really surprised reading it, but it's something I have to read. 2 books, one day. I'm hoping to finish them by the time my boyfriend comes home from work, and we're just going to call this like preparation for doing a 24-hour readathon. I've never done a 24-hour reading video because like, I don't know that I could physically do it. Can I even read 2 books in one day? I don't know. We shall see.
Weightless, I am weightless. Underneath your wind I soar.
So Lily structures her journal entries as letters to Ellen, and it's so funny because I feel like when Colleen Hoover was writing this, she's like, okay, who is a universally loved figure that Lily can write letters to for her journal? And she was like, Ellen, everybody loves Ellen. And then like the Ellen hate of 2020 happens. Didn't really age well, did it? I'm on page 72 right now, and this man Ryle is so cringe. I cannot, like, getting on his knees and begging her to sleep with him. Ew, no, don't like that. Don't like that at all. The secondhand embarrassment I am getting from Ryle is unreal. Like, this man picks her up in a party and walks her to his room. Like, it's just so cringe. And like the when she's like, everyone is staring. Like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. No, no. I'm assuming that this is Ryle like at his best. It's the beginning of the book, and it's just completely cringe. You know, I've only read 107 pages of Colleen Hoover writing, but I am convinced that she is trolling us. She goes, when he was wiping that cow shit on me, it was quite possibly the most turned on I have ever been. This is it. Like, this is what we're hyping up. Like, this is like the most hyped up book on Booktok, and they're making a movie starring Blake Lively. I get it. It's about the overall message, not specific lines, but even Ryle, like him in the beginning when he's supposed to be this like perfect boyfriend that Lily's falling in love with, he's like the most cringe person I have ever like come across as a book boyfriend. So just a little theory I have while I'm getting a snack. So Alyssa's acting really weird towards Lily, so I feel like Ryle must have done this like abusive thing to girls in the past, and she knows about it, which is why she's not excited for them to date. But like, if that is the case, she should tell Lily about Ryle's past. Overall, I would say I'm enjoying the book so far. It's definitely a very easy, quick-paced read. Like, I'm not getting bored at all. So far, I'm like 150 pages into the book. Well, between like 120 pages and 150 pages. I don't know the exact count, but so far I'm enjoying it. Like, I'm not saying like, oh my god, I understand the hype, but like, it's a fine read so far. So while the Ryle scenes are making me cringe, the Lily and Atlas scenes from the past are just so sweet. I love them so much. It's just really beautiful, and of course, like, our most beautiful moments in this book have to come in the form of Ellen DeGeneres fan letters.
Feel wasted with every breath I draw from you. I die a million times for you. I follow you
That was chapter 15.
My love.
Page 215. Do you ever have words that like you just don't like them because they make you cringe? Yeah, Ryle just used one of the most surprising. And about the characters that used one of my cringe words, it was Ryle who said it.
To your every need you cry, I bleed.
Okay, right now I'm on page 233 and Lily says, I swear, Ryle, you overreacted before giving me the chance to explain. I say to him, now get the fuck out of my apartment. Yeah, bro, get the fuck out of her apartment. Like, what are you doing? I hate this man. I hate this man. But we still have a good chunk of the book left. So I'm not sure, like, you know, is this like a solid get the fuck out of my apartment, or are we like gonna see like him come back on the push and pulls of this type of relationship before she like really like gives him up for good? This book is really hard to talk about, which is why I haven't really given you much like insightful commentary other than just kind of like my quick little reactions to things, because I have never experienced a relationship like this, so it's hard for me to speak on like the accuracy of how this goes, but things that I have learned from just general life. Oh, the pizza's ready. Hold on. This book touches on such a hard topic, especially to talk about, especially if you've never been in this situation. Like, I have never been in this type of relationship before, but like, you know, I've obviously seen it depicted in media and just generally talked about like on psychology podcasts, because like I do love some good psychology podcasts. I think this book is doing a good job of depicting the abuse cycle, how an abuser will hurt you, and then they're just like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, and that's what like brings you back to them and draws you back to them, because they had you on such a high at the beginning of the relationship because they are love bombing you. You are the best girl in the world. There is nobody that can compete with you, and then they hit you and you're like, wait, what just happened? Like, I'm so confused. Like, I was in this fairy tale, and then you're like, oh my god, no, I am so sorry. Like, I just love you so much, and like it just brings you back to them, and it's just a cycle that continues over and over, and then the abuse always escalates as it goes on. And that's like what my general idea of what an abusive relationship looks like, and that is what's being depicted in this book. But again, not being in the situation or not even really talking to a lot of survivors of abuse, I can't say for sure like, oh my god, like this is a great depiction of it. This is just like a pretty standard depiction of it so far from what I've seen in media. But I do think it's interesting that when he meets Lily in the beginning of the book, she is on this ledge, right? And she has no intention of jumping off the ledge, but he thinks that she's gonna jump off the ledge. And that's interesting to me, because one of my preconceived notions of abuse is that abusers will find people who have low self-esteem, people who are alone, right? Like Lily was living alone in Boston. Obviously, he thought she was about to jump off a ledge, and he was like, no, that's like the girl I want to be with. And it's like, oh yeah, because he just like fell in love with her personality. But also too, I think abusers specifically pick out these people who have low self-esteem because they're easier to get under your control. So I think that is also very interesting. Like the night he meets Lily is when she's at her most vulnerable, and he's like, I can't stop thinking about this girl. But now we're in the home stretch of the book, so I'm scared for what's to come. I feel like it's gonna get worse and worse. So yeah, we'll see. But honestly, I'm gonna go eat my pizza first because I need some happiness before I embark on this emotionally draining journey that is the last like 130 pages. We're learning Ryle's backstory right now, like what he went through when he was a child. And just no, like, sorry, Lily, it's not your job to fix this man. You're free to leave, okay? Like, do not feel bad for him. And I kind of hate his sister. Like, throughout the book, I've liked her, but now I don't like her because she's just like, oh, like, just hear him out. He has like a traumatic past, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what happened between you. It's like between you guys, but like, he has a traumatic past. Like, I'm sorry, trauma does not equal you get to physically abuse people and then they should take you back. No, just no. Okay, so Lily is forgiving him, and this is what she says. Remember what you said to me on the roof that night, like the night they met? You said, there's no such thing as bad people. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. He said that in reference to her telling him a story about how her father would physically abuse her mother. And he was like, oh, we're not bad people. We just sometimes do bad things. No, he was a bad person. And Lily, that should have been red flag number one, that the fact that he did not immediately condemn your abusive father. Okay. Alyssa has been redeemed in my eyes. She's like, yeah, he's my brother and I love him, but if you ever get back with him, I would never talk to you again because you're my best friend. I'm not sure if you guys have missed this oh so subtle detail in this book, but Alyssa and Marshall, they're rich. And they're not just like a little rich, like they're rich. I only have about 30 pages left of this book, but I can't finish because my dogs want dinner. Is it dinner time? Okay. Cooper, is it dinner time? So I finally finished It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Let's talk about it because I have lots to say. I would say knowing like the plot twist of the book going into it does make you view it from a different perspective. I could see my experience reading it knowing that Ryle is abusive versus me going into it completely blind as me having two very different experiences. Because I knew what was coming in the book, I look at Ryle through a completely different lens in the beginning, whereas if you went into this blind, like I could see, okay, you fall in love with this character and then, you know, he does these things to her and then he apologizes. And I think this book is meant to take you along as the reader and show you how you can forgive somebody who does these things to you, because look at you even fell in love with Ryle at the beginning of this book. You were like, oh my god, this is a dream man, and oh my god, he just made one little mistake. And I think going into it completely blind would give you a more impactful experience than going into it knowing what it is about. Ryle was super cringy in the beginning, and it was like, is it because I knew he was a bad person or that he was gonna do bad things to Lily that I was already kind of viewing him negatively, so I was just viewing what he was doing as cringe? But I don't think so, because if I met somebody and the way I met them is they were kicking a chair on a roof and then they looked at me, we got into a conversation, they're like, I want to F you, like, yeah, no, I would be like a little weirded out and a little cringed by that. And then knocking on 29 apartment doors and then begging on your knees to sleep with somebody, yeah, no, I'm sorry, super cringe. I thought Lily and Atlas's relationship in this book was very sweet though. I really loved reading those past chapters of what they went through when they were teenagers. I thought that was obviously the most beautiful part of the book, seeing that their love for each other and how true it was and how pure it was and how they just wanted to help each other. My biggest issue with this book is I feel like Ryle is not painted enough as a villain. I understand not wanting to make him this like cartoon villain, right? This character of what a villain would be. Just because you are abusive to someone doesn't mean you don't also feel regret and remorse and you feel sorry and all these different things, right? I totally understand. We are complex people, but she almost like humanizes him too much at the end, right? Like, he did awful things to Lily and then it's just kind of like, oh, well, now she's like, I want a divorce, and he's just super apologetic. He's never mean to her at all, ever again. I just don't like that he's painted at the end of just being like this awesome co-parent who's super understanding and loving and he loves his daughter. And like, we never really talk about therapy in the book. And when we talk about the traumatic past that he went through, he's like, I've been seeing a therapist since I was 6 years old, but there's no mention of present day Ryle in this book going to therapy, and he clearly needs to go to therapy. So I don't like how he's just like to overly humanized in this book. Like, oh, we should almost feel sorry for him, because that's kind of how it felt in a way. Like, oh, we should feel sorry for him because he's going through things too, and that's why he did these things to her, which no. So I guess that's my biggest issue with the book, is I think he needed to be a little more villainous, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, make him like verbally abusive, make us hate him and make him verbally abusive. No, I'm not saying that at all, but at the same time, like, you wouldn't have somebody who would do those things to you and then just all of a sudden be super remorseful and then just be like the most awesome co-parent ever. Like, you don't go from being physically abusive, they want a divorce, and like, oh my god, I'm just like an A+ co-parent over here. So we'll see what's in store for us in this book. But to be fair, like, I don't think this book was even planned when she wrote this book, you know? This book kind of seemed like a cash grab to me. Like, that's how I viewed it as an outsider looking into it. So, you know, if we're just viewing this as a standalone and we're not looking at the continuation of the story, then yeah, she just tries to make you feel bad for Ryle and almost gives him a redemption arc at the end that I don't think is deserved. But we'll see how much of his redemption arc is real in this book. I am very interested to read it. I gotta take my dogs for a walk and then I will be reading this book until I finish it. This book was published in 2022 and we're still writing Ellen DeGeneres letters. Ryle in this book is just validating my feelings that he had too much of a redemption arc and it ends with us, because you don't go from being abusive to like, oh, we're just one big happy co-parenting family. No, he's a piece of shit and he's always going to be a piece of shit, and it's just so obvious in this book. But I feel like that should not be in this book, right? Like, it should have been at the end of It Ends With Us, because how many people who are going to read It Ends With Us and then also pick up this book? I mean, that book has 2.6 million ratings. Are 2.6 million people reading this book? I don't think so. So I feel like it should have been on the main book, the main story, that he is still a piece of shit. Also, don't understand Alyssa and Marshall. Like, I get it, Alyssa is Ryle's sister, but even Marshall, so right now he's talking to Lily and he says, because I love him, I do. He's been my best friend since we were kids, but I also hate him for not being better. Nothing you have done and nothing you could do would excuse any man's hands on you out of anger. I'm sorry, I'm not good at reading out loud, but why are we still friends with him? He's an abuser. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Like, why wouldn't you just say to your friend, like, hey, I don't agree with what you're doing and I can't be friends with somebody like you unless I see you actively trying to better yourself and go to therapy or something. I don't know, but I need to see you actively trying to be better. Like, why are we still friends with an abuser? Like, I don't get I'm not understanding. Like, I get it, people are complex, but no, he did a really bad thing, and it's just like, oh, his only like consequence for doing this bad thing is like her not being in a relationship with him, when his consequences should have been much greater. Okay, so I'm on page 207, so we have about 100 pages left, and she has an incident with Ryle, and she goes, my heart is shattered because Ryle hasn't changed at all. No shit, he has not changed, and that is my problem with the ending of the first book. Okay, so you know what, I'm glad we're seeing it in here, but it should have been shown in the first book. I finished. I read 2 books in one day. I don't know how the 24-hour video girlies do it. Will I ever be one of those girls? We don't know, because reading 2 books in one day, I mean, I guess I feel like I could read another one if I was making this a 24-hour video, but why would I want to? I kind of just like want to go to bed in peace. This was a perfect way to end the story, and I definitely think that this was necessary, because like I know like she was like, oh, I never wanted to make a sequel for It Ends With Us, but I definitely think that this sequel was necessary, because like I said, and I've repeated it before, the way It Ends With Us ended, the ending with Ryle just didn't make sense to me, because we were humanizing too much. We were just speaking like, oh, he's so sorry for his actions and now he's the perfect co-parent, but in this book we really see like what he is genuinely like, and because they're not together, he's not having that like physical abuse with her, but although there is some close calls in this book, it really turns to verbal like abuse in this book, which is interesting because we never saw that in the first book, but it's honestly like understandable for his character to be doing that. And the one thing I did like about this book, at the end, Lily finally is like, hey bro, in order to see my daughter, you gotta go to anger management, which I have been saying since the end of that book. I mean, I said therapy, not anger management, but like same thing. And honestly, I just wish she would have done it sooner in this book, but you know what, it was done. And overall, really enjoyed this one, and this one definitely has a lighter tone to it. There is still harder topics, especially Alice's side of the story is also dealing with hard topics. So when she says this is her lighthearted read, what are her other books like? What are her other books like that this is a lighthearted read? I mean, I get what she's saying, because like, you know, the female main lead, the male main lead, Lily, Atlas, they don't have too much drama within themselves, as them dealing separately with drama and then coming together as this like super like emotionally healthy couple, which I also love. I love not seeing a toxic relationship, which I think is what she means by this is lighthearted. But yeah, I'm gonna go to bed now, but I read 2 books one day, and overall I really enjoyed them. I'm not really sure how to rate them. I think It Ends With Us, I would probably end on a 4-star rating, because overall I actually did enjoy the book, other than like the one thing that I didn't like that I have said over and over and over again. So I would say that's probably a 4-star, and this one I would also probably rate at a 4-star. I don't know, they didn't really give me those 5-star feelings, but I definitely see why that they are hyped up. And I have other Colleen Hoover books on my shelf. I wouldn't say these books are making me be like, oh my god, I cannot wait to pick up my other Colleen Hoover books. I'm just like, okay, I read it, I know what the most popular book is like now, cool. And that's kind of it. But you know what, we knocked 2 books off of the TBR jar selections, which I am very happy with, because last month I didn't do so well. But hey, look, we knocked 2 books off of the TBR jar. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Subscribe down below if you like this. Bye.